Hello, everybody, and welcome to class number 2 of our Soundtrap certification course. My name is Chase Banks, and I'm one of the marketing managers on the Hal Leonard education team. Thank you again so much for joining us this evening. We're so happy you're here. Just a few notes this evening. We do have the live caption or closed captioning feature turned on. So if you'd like to enable that, at the bottom of your Zoom window, find that button that says CC, and you should be able to turn that on. We're also going to try something different tonight. We're going to have the chat turned off this evening, but the Q&A feature is on. So for any questions you might have, drop them into the Q&A feature, and Jillian and I will do our best to get you an answer. So without further ado, I'll turn things over to Jillian.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chase. Thank you, everyone, for coming back, being here with us. We are here on our third and fourth lesson combined together in our second Zoom. So I'm really excited to, again, have this crew back here. I will be following alongside Chase on the Q&A. So if you have any questions, I will be looking through that and we can answer those in time as best as we can follow. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we're going to jump in. We had some technical difficulties last time, but we have worked out those kinks. So I'm looking forward to having this go much more fluidly than last time. And thank you again for your patience with that. Okay, so we're going to hold off on answering questions just for a few moments here. I'm just going to quickly go through what we're going to cover today in class, and then we're going to jump into questions pretty much right away. So today, we are going to focus on audio and MIDI. These are standard key terms that are used within music production. And as well as that, we're going to be creating 2 songs using both of these file types. This is to be in addition to our foundational course, which we focused on controls and loops. And we were able to kind of figure out where those main loops are and build a song based on that. So let's just quickly go through this here. We're going to answer those questions just in a few moments. After that, we're going to take some time and just take a look at our previous assignment that we were working on together last class, and then you were able to complete asynchronously. We're going to review where loops and controls are together. So for those of you who, again, are just starting using Soundtrap, no need to worry. We're going to take a moment and just review those as well together. We're going to jump into our audio and MIDI lesson, which is lessons 3 and 4, and then we're going to take some time and prepare for next week, and so you have all the details that you need moving forward. Okay, so I'm going to answer a couple questions that Chase had received, and then we're going to jump into the Q&A. So if you have any additional questions that you're thinking about as I'm going forward with this, please feel free to type those in and we will get to that. I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about sharing links and collaboration. So students who are logged into an EDU account, like the accounts that you're signed up for right now, they're in a walled garden. And because of that, when they go to collaborate with each other, it only allows students who are part of that group to work together. If they are to collaborate with students who are not part of your EDU account or are from a different school, they have to take separate steps in order to be able to collaborate. And that's just a safety feature within Soundtrap. So there are workarounds for this, and I'm going to show you shortly how we can go ahead and share a link. Now, in terms of the collaboration feature, you can have 2 people who can share projects with one another, but they cannot collaborate unless they're within that class group. So let me go ahead and demonstrate this very quickly. I'm going to go ahead back to Chrome here, which is my internet. And I'm just going to show you my project, my studio homepage here with my projects. So I have a demo project here, And let's say I want to share this with someone and I know that they're not part of my group. And groups are within this section here. Groups you use to create your classes. So as part of Hanover Middle School, I created a group of 700 students, all within that. So I could have my grades 5 through 8 working within that default group. And now if I'm collaborating with another teacher or again, someone outside my organization, I can do that by selecting these 3 dots over here on the right and then creating a shareable copy link. And we're going to be using this today, in fact. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and I can actually go ahead and share it. Chase, quick question. Can I still share this Soundtrap link with the participants in the chat, or should I do it through the Q&A?
No, you can do it in the chat. Just make sure
Okay.
It's selected to everybody.
Okay, sure. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And let's see. I see it says hosts and panelists. I'm not getting everybody on here. So I will come back to that. Chase, do you mind taking a look at that?
Yeah, I'm going to copy that link and send it for everybody right now.
Perfect. Okay. So with that, you're now able to see your project. And Chase and I discussed this beforehand. You want to make sure that you're logged into your Soundtrap account. I'm sure that page will pop up for you when you click on that link. But that is a forked link, and that should bring you right to the project. So when you open that up, it should look something like this. So if you want to go ahead and test that out now, you absolutely can. And all of the playback components are available on here. You can even edit this. It just won't be collaborated between you and I. Or if you're to share this link with anyone else, it creates an individual copy for them. But you're still able to share that link, which is really nice. Now, again, if you're part of the organization, you can absolutely go ahead and collaborate. So this is over here, the collaboration tab. I can click invite and I can type whoever's email, or if they're part of that group, their actual name will pop up. And students, for example, can just type in their partner's name and their username, their Soundtrap username that they're given as default should pop up, and they can collaborate on a project together, meaning they can edit the same project. So it doesn't just create a copy for them. It's the Google Docs version. Okay.
Hey, Jillian, one thing real quick. I just got a Q&A that says someone did not get the URL. Just curious, for those in attendance, if you look over in the chat window, and you might have to open that chat window with the button at the bottom of the Zoom window, there should be a link to Soundtrap to access this demo project. Just double check that area real quick for me. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I can go ahead and just share that with you one more time. And just as a review too, it's these 3 dots here in the corner, and I'm just going to click get shared copy, get a shareable copy, and copy that link. And then I can send that to whoever. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and move forward with some of those other questions. And again, these are great questions. I'm so glad that you're asking these. Here we go. So duration limit on projects. Basically, there are no restrictions to how long a project can be. I did look up that there are only so many times that you can play back loops in the loop tab, and apparently it's 3,000. I'm not sure if someone would ever go beyond that, but there is a listening limit to that. It will stop working after 3,000 plays, and then I believe you just have to reset the screen or refresh the page. But other than that, there are no limitations, which is great. The only thing I will mention is that the more tracks that you add, if they're MIDI or audio files, the more RAM and memory that your system is going to use. So most likely it will become slower and slower as you play back your projects. I can demonstrate this for you. I just want to show you a quick feature here, and I can use that same demo project that we have open. So for whatever reason, if you have a student who has opened up a lot of tracks, maybe it's 30, maybe it's 45, you can go ahead and help them to play it back faster or more accurately, especially if it's on a Chromebook. Macs have a lot more RAM and memory, but we can go into some of the settings in here and adjust the quality. So by adjusting this quality, it actually adjusts the playback speed. It's going to still be able to play correctly. It's just going to compress the sound a little bit so that the latency kind of catches up as it plays back. So if you have a student with that many tracks, you may want to select extra low. Again, the compression will happen. The quality of it will go down, but the computer will be able to process each file faster. So that's an option for you, and that's in sound quality. That's more of an advanced feature, but for those of you who are curious about that, hopefully that's helpful. So that's settings, and that's in sound quality. So if a student cannot really play back their project because it has too many tracks, you can adjust that for them.
Hey everyone, one real quick thing. Sorry to jump in, Jillian. If you're having problems accessing that demo file by chance, I'll make sure that we include that link in the email that goes out tomorrow morning. Some people said they're waiting on maybe a verification code or something else. So if you're having any issues, just look out for that email tomorrow morning. And as always, feel free to email hledu@halleonard.com. I'll put that in the chat, and our team's always happy to help that way as well.
Great. Denise, we're going to get to your question in just a few moments, but first I'm just going to finish out these ones here that I have included. We had a couple questions about copyright of loops. Now, all of the Soundtrap loops and sound effects are royalty free, which means that you can use those loops in any sequence. You can share those sounds, whether they're individually or combined. But in terms of being able to share it and distribute it for royalties, you cannot do that with the individual loops. And there's a couple of different websites that I can think of as examples, like BeatStars. You can take individual loops and purchase them. And a lot of hip hop artists will do this. They'll take a beat and they'll purchase that from that website, and then they'll combine and layer their own loops to that, and then distribute that and sell it. So the same thing goes for Soundtrap in the sense of, they do have individual loops and sounds, but they cannot be distributed and sold. And that also includes for something they call music beds, which is taking a sound loop, like a drum loop, and then say you add a melody on top of it, and then you want to take that and you want to sell that. Unfortunately, you can't. So they tried to protect each of the samples that are recorded, and those samples are recorded by professional musicians. So they get certain compensation for that. So if it's sold by someone else, then it's not giving those rights to those artists, as well as it's in effect of that copyright. So hopefully that's somewhat helpful. I know that there's the idea of being able to distribute it on YouTube and share it through those platforms, SoundCloud, for example. The idea behind Soundtrap and EDU Soundtrap is that students are able to share their music. And so if they want to share it through SoundCloud and they want to share it through YouTube, I don't think there's any problems with that. But it's just a matter of whether they're trying to sell it and make money off of the music that they make using the Soundtrap loops. That's a different type of conversation, and you can have that with them. So we try to keep those within the program themselves. And Soundtrap is particularly the type of tool to use for learning music production. So hopefully that's the focus in your classroom. But you can continue to have those conversations if it ever comes up. Demo files. So we ran into this together last class, and I apologize for not being able to share those links with you. And we're thankfully making that happen for you today. But in terms of the demo files that they have in Soundtrap, it's pretty easy to access them. Once you select Enter Studio, you can then go ahead and open up any of the demo files that are in there. And I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate that now. So let me go ahead and close this screen. And we're going to go back here. Okay. So this is an actual demo project, but we're going to go back to our studio homepage. That's what I like to call it. So this is where all your projects live. And then over here on the left-hand side, this is how you start a new project, basically. So you're going to click Enter Studio, and then it's going to open a blank project. And within this section, there's a demos option. And these are all the different demos that they have. I've been using the rock demo, but you can select any of the others. And it will load those projects. And some of them actually have quite a bit. This one does. So you can use these for practice. Now, if you open up a new project, there's also another way to do it as well. So say you want to maybe start from a blank slate, you can go to File, New, and then Demos also shows up there as well. So even if I'm on this demo, I could probably switch to a different one here and load that one for me. Yeah, so there we go. So that's how you get to some of the demo files. And again, apologies for the confusion with that with last class. Okay, so Denise asked about the melodic loops and making sure that they are in the same key. That's a great question. And I can demonstrate this now. So I'm going to go ahead and enter Studio. And this is going to open up a blank project here. So a couple of things that you're going to want to do when you start your project. And we were going to get more into this today. We were just kind of exploring last class. But down here in the playback controls, we have key. So I'm going to go ahead and just, before I even add anything, I'm going to select what key I'm interested in writing in. And, you know, there's the old tale of major is happy, minor is sad. You can find a unique way to explain that to your students. You know, generally it's nice to compare them emotively, but in this case, we're just going to go ahead and explore a key. So I'm going to go ahead and select C minor. And then I'm going to go over here to my loop tab. This is where my loops live. And it's giving me the option for a scale here. And since I selected my C minor scale, I'm going to go ahead and also make sure that this is minor. Now, the loops should play back in C minor. And we're going to get more in detail about the types of loops that are used in Soundtrap today. And I'll tell you that the ones that with the eighth notes here are most likely going to be 99% of the time in C minor or whatever key that you select. The audio files, these ones here, which again, we'll talk about, these ones can sometimes not be in that key. And that's for various other reasons, just based on the data, the format of it. So if that ever happens, you just want to make sure to try and do a little bit more exploring. Even if I can suggest using more of these loops when you're starting out trying to create songs in one key, until you have listeners who are able to differentiate what is playing in the right key. You know, you want to try to use those tools. So you definitely make sure they select their key, make sure that they select their scale here. And then if they're having a difficult time listening for something playing back in the wrong key, you can kind of guide them by either helping them find a different loop that's well more suited for their song, or just try to explain to them why it doesn't sound right and what we can do to kind of change that. So that's with melodic loops. And we're going to be talking more about the types of loops today, which is pretty cool. There's two different types, but that overall covers melodic loops. Any more questions in regards to the things that we've looked over? Any of the thoughts that you might still have about those questions? Because I definitely want to answer some of those. Okay, so Todd says, when I try to record in the middle of a song, it always cuts recording at the beginning or starts recording at the beginning. Okay. Let's see here. That's probably because of the loop bar. So if I go back here to Chrome, and I'm wondering if I can just keep the Q&A open because I'm most likely going to be using Soundtrap to demo these. Okay. So there is a loop bar that pops up at the top here. And I'm just going to go ahead and add a loop. And that's this grayed out bar. Now, this is really useful when you're playing back short sections of your music. So like in our demo project, we have our loop bar here, and it's just going to loop the introduction of our song. If I want to work on the chorus of my song, I can play this back. And it's just going to go right back to the beginning of that loop. So if you're recording something and you happen to have this loop bar on, it's most likely going to jump back to the wrong spot, especially if it's not at the beginning here. It's just going to start recording from whatever bar it's enabled. So when you're recording, I would suggest unenabling it. And to do that, it's pretty easy. You just select the bar here, it turns off. There's also a button over here on the right, which I'm trying to zoom in, see if it lets me do it. Hey, there we go. There's a button here on the right. That's also part of that loop feature. So you can go ahead and disable that as well. So that will help with recording for sure. Start, stop, loops. Shelly, let's see. How do you place them exactly where you want them rather than starting at the beginning or playing at the end? Okay, yeah. We are going to talk about that. So we will get to that question. Importing songs, Caroline. Okay. And then put in our loops. Importing songs. I'm sure you probably have students who are interested in doing that. And there is a way to do it. And most likely they're going to say, I have a song, it's on YouTube, and I want to put it in Soundtrap so I can make a remix or I can do something like that. The answer is yes, but unfortunately, it's not an easy process. For you as a teacher, you're going to have to go ahead and purchase those songs and then go ahead and add them to a project. And if they're part of your walled garden, if they're part of your group, then you can go ahead and share an assignment. We can talk about sharing assignments later on. But the answer is yes. There are a lot of illegal ways to do this. And it's discouraged just because you want to make sure that you're compensating the artist who created the song. There might be resources they're called stems, and stems are sections or loops within a song, within an actual song, that can be used and reused for educational purposes. And I can look up and see if I can find any resources for you, especially if you wanted to do a remix project with your students. It's definitely possible, but there are a lot of hoops to kind of jump through with that. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. The answer is yes, but it's a little complicated. We'll see if we can get to that later on, maybe in the last lesson we have together. That's a good question though. Okay, Jeb, let's see. if I like a melodic loop or an arpeggio, is there a way to take that riff and turn it into a progression? Ooh. Would transposing an individual loop of 8 bars to a different chord be possible? Okay. The answer is yes, definitely. Now let's see if I can do this very quickly. If I look up a piano loop, and we're going to learn about these particular loops today. So I'm going to try to find one that has eighth notes here. That is not, a pizzicato pluck is not what I want. Let's see, here's piano. Okay, I'm going to delete this one. I'm going to play this back. So this here, this is a specific type of loop we're going to talk about, as I keep mentioning, but if you want to edit this loop so that you can kind of change it. So for example, like you're saying, create an arpeggio or create a melodic loop. We can go ahead and edit these by selecting edit and edit notes. And this is going to pop up. This is our piano roll. And this is all of the notes that are recorded into Soundtrap. So you can take these notes and adjust them any way that you want. If you want to create a melody, for example, you probably can do that. The way I would is I would just delete what's here. There's a simple melody. And then I can go ahead and change the instrument here. So here's piano roll. There's my instrument. And here's a bunch of other instruments that you can also change it to. So in the sake of time, if I picked like a lead like this here and played it back. So now instead of having that original loop, which was the dusty chords, we have a simple basic melody. And that was just by changing the instrument sound and then also just changing the chords within that. For arpeggiating, for sure. I mean, you can absolutely make some incredible stuff out of the chords that are within Soundtrap. That's awesome. Wow, these questions are great, you guys. Okay, can you export the song you've created? Absolutely, Kelly, you can. I've created a backing track for one of my music programs. Can I export so my students can perform with it? Yes. So to export, and again, for those of you who are brand new to Soundtrap, I don't want to overwhelm you with all of these extra steps, but we're just going to cover these for the next 3 minutes, and then we're going to jump into our new material, our review, and then our new material. Okay, so I have, let's see, this song here. Awesomeness 2. I'm going to go ahead and take this and export it. So this handy feature over here, my 3 dots, I'm going to click on that and I'm going to press download. And it's going to give me some options to download it. MP3 is probably the smallest of the files. The WAV files are going to be the largest. MP3 is more compressed. WAV is less compressed. So depending on the quality that you're looking for, you might want to choose one or the other. Personally, as a performer, musician, I try to use WAV files as much as possible, just because I find the quality is so much better. But if you're just doing it to send it to somebody so they can do it for listening, or if you're sending a whole batch of this song or songs like it, you want to try to use MP3 because it's going to be of the smallest files. So that, again, it's the 3 dots here. And then if you go down to download, you can export that. It should pop up at the bottom of your Chrome or whatever internet browser you use. And then you can go ahead and add this to your files. Really good question, Kelly. What kind of files when you export, right, Greg? Okay, so yeah, we got that, right? The 2 main ones are WAV and MP3. Can you export on the free versions? I believe you can. Yes, I'm almost positive. The version that we have now is EDU, but if your students had general subscription. They definitely could do it too. Ooh, can you zip it? Greg, I love this. I'm trying to think if you can. I know that for the files that are within Soundtrap, what you could do is you could probably export it to a program like Noteflight, and it would export all of those individual tracks, and it would show up as notation. And I think you could probably do it from that program. I'm trying to think if you can do it from here. Let's see. If I have my demo project, export, let's see. Okay, so export MIDI tracks. That's going to be your best bet. So if you want to export to a program like Sibelius or Finale or Logic or Ableton, you want to try to maybe export the MIDI files. Otherwise, you can actually individually export each track here. So if you hover over the 3 dots within your tracks, you can select export this track and it'll do that for you. You just have to do that with all your tracks, but that would work. That's probably the way I would do it. Unfortunately, I wish there was an easier way to just like export them all at the same time, but that's a good workaround. Okay. Laura, last question. There are, just for now, until maybe we can wrap at the end here and we can answer a few more. There are 3 computers at my school that aren't able to open Soundtrap at school. Do you have an idea of how to solve this problem? Laptops are an issue. Okay, so as long as the computers have access to Wi-Fi, they should be able to open up Soundtrap. But I will say, they need to make sure that they're using the Chrome browser, and that's Google Chrome. It does not play nicely in Safari or Firefox. So if it's possible to get those browsers on, or that browser, the Chrome, on your computers that you have at your school, that's going to be your best bet. I definitely have run into that issue before, and I've had students who just bring in their own computers to school and they use Safari instead of Google Chrome. And I try to have that conversation with them and see if they can work with their parents in getting Google Chrome, just because it's really made for this. Yeah, I think hopefully that answers your question. Okay, yeah, it works at home on the laptop, but it's not working at school. Yeah, so I would definitely check the browser issue first. And then if it's not the browser, I would definitely just look into sending a ticket to Soundtrap and seeing if there is maybe a next step that you can take for that. But if you have the right browser and you have internet access, you should be just fine. Honestly, I think it will solve like 99% of that. Okay, super. Thank you so much for sharing those questions. Those are awesome. And I'm certain that there is someone out there that has that same question. So please keep them rolling, and we'll try to answer more at the end. Okay. We have a half hour to get through quite a bit. So I'm going to go ahead here and start in on the assignment that we had last class. So before, we were looking at exploring the interface. So by opening up a new project and choosing from the demos that were there, we were able to kind of play around with the tools within that. And I'm just going to go ahead and demonstrate that for you, for those of you who were a little confused from last class. And I'm going to continue to apologize for that because that was messy and that was on my part. So let's go back to Chrome here. Okay, so we opened up our demo project, right? Which is this one. And we did that through File, New, Demos, and any of the ones that are in here. So when I say playback controls, we're taking a look here at the bottom. I'm going to close my Q&A. And we're going to start off here and just play our track. We have our rewind, our fast forward. We have this back button that brings us all the way to the beginning. And we have our master volume, which you can play with. We know we have key here. We're not going to go ahead and adjust that right now, but we know it's there. We have tempo, which is our tap tempo, and we can adjust the timing of this. I'm not going to do that right now because it's going to take time away from playing this back, but you can adjust the tempo as well. You can turn on the metronome. And you have some options here for that. Now that's the playback bar and the controls that are down here. Here on the left, we have our track controls. So I'm going to go ahead and start soloing some of these tracks. That means we're just going to listen to one at a time unless we start adding more. And to solo the track, you just click on this headphone button. We can layer solo tracks. In addition to that, we can also mute tracks, and you can see the ones that aren't soloed are muted. But if we go back here and we press our speaker icon with the X, we can mute any of these other ones. Another thing too is we have our volume features that are within each track. So you can adjust the volume of each sound that plays back. Let's go ahead and just look at that. That's a really helpful feature when you're trying to adjust those volumes so they sound great. We also had some other features over here. We have a record enable, which allows us to record into that track. We'll get to that eventually. We have automation, which allows us to make adjustments to volume and panning and other features. We won't get into that right now. We have our track icon. And we have our track options. So we were taking a look here at deleting tracks. So we can go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one here. And to do that, I'm going to press the three dots and select delete track. It's going to delete the whole thing. I can also, if I want to keep that track available and just delete what's inside it, I can actually click on this and either choose edit, never mind, control click and cut, or I can just press backspace on my computer. I prefer to press backspace or delete, and it'll delete for me. So that track is still there, but my actual file is gone. So again, the beginning of that, I hit control click, and there are a bunch of other options here, but I chose cut or delete. Okay. A few other things too, which we didn't really have the chance to get into, which we'll get into now. And I'm going to go back here to the keynote. I'm going to skip ahead to it because of time. Adding a track. Okay. And these are short videos. They do not have sound, but it's just so you can see it. So adding a track, we selected from the loop tab, which is there on the right. And to add your track, you can either click and drag like that, or you can also double click a track inside of your project. For looping, so if we wanted to loop in Soundtrap to do that, if you hover over the top right-hand corner, you can drag that loop all the way out. So to really extend that. And we're going to go ahead and explore this in just a few moments. I know this is quite a bit. Deleting, I showed you what this is. So you can control click, you can either press cut, you can press delete, you can press backspace, or you can choose the 3 dots in the corner of your track and press delete track. And then lastly, moving. So this is if you want to move where that track is. Or rather, I shouldn't say track because that's like our channel, but this actual file here. To do that, you can either shrink it by grabbing the top right-hand corner, or you can shorten the actual loop by grabbing the bottom left and right corners. So again, I grab the center of my track to drag it from left to right. I can choose the loop option to shrink it. And then if I want to shrink it even more, I can go ahead and grab the edges of that. We're going to go ahead and explore this right now. So if you can go into Soundtrap, and we're going to go ahead and just practice that. So this is moving our tracks. And let me go ahead and go back in here. But if you want to just take one of these tracks here, you're just going to grab the center of it and you're just going to drag it around. If we want to take one of these and extend it, grab the top right-hand corner and we can extend that loop. And we can hear what that sounds like too. Okay. We can also shrink our tracks. And to do that, if you take another track here, if you go to the bottom right-hand corner, this allows you to make the loop even smaller. As small as you want, really. Okay, so again, we have the moving, we have the looping, extending it, and we also have the shrinking of the tracks here. And you can go ahead and practice a little bit of that when you're creating your projects for next week. Hopefully that answered a couple questions too, because I know some of you were like, okay, so I add my loops, but how do I move them around? That's how to do it. Okay, fantastic. Make sure when you are done with your amazing, super fantastic project that you save it, and the save button is at the top of your screen. And then we also talked about our studio homepage, so starting a new project. And I just want to make sure, okay, yeah, I'm sharing my keynote, awesome. Okay, great. We're going to jump into our lesson today. Now, there is actually not a lot to this lesson, but it's a great introduction to these 2 different file types, which are really important. And hold on, we get a Q&A. Oh, okay, awesome. So, audio. Audio is one of the basic file forms that is used within Soundtrap, along with something called MIDI. Now, if you want to introduce audio and MIDI to your students, it's really good to have a conversation about what sound is, because sound gives them a basic understanding of how the digital version appears in Soundtrap. So I have a lesson that comes before this. It's actually on my website, and I can add the link later so you guys can check it out. But we talk a little bit about what sound is, and I usually try to introduce it as a question. They eventually get to the conversation, oh, sound is made up of vibrations. And then we ask questions like, how do we hear sound? Okay, well, if we know it's vibrations, how do our ears determine what that is? And we like to use a program, or not a program, but a website. It's called Chrome Music Lab. I'm sure you used it during the pandemic. It was really popular in that time, but there's an app within that called Sound Waves, and it demonstrates how air molecules move based on pitch, based on how fast how high or how low a sound is. So we try to just have that conversation before we delve into Soundtrap, just because we are talking about sound and understanding that, and just having that conversation beforehand is really helpful when we talk about digital sound. So how is sound recorded on the computer? And this is a question that you can bring to your students. You might get a million different answers, but it was a really great conversation during the pandemic because we were all using Zoom. And I could ask the question, well, how are you able to hear me through your computer? And how am I able to hear you? How does that work, right? Eventually, you have a student who's like, oh, microphone. And they would be right. So here are 4 different types of microphones. The first one on the left is a dynamic microphone. And all of these microphones have a transducer in them. And the transducer is what changes those waves to electrical impulses, which then your computer is able to read. But in the dynamic microphone, there's that. And these are typically used on stage. Probably seen them all over the place. Very popular. Condenser microphone, not so popular. But this one is a studio microphone. So it's really helping to isolate the sound a little more. It's not something that you use on a huge, ginormous stage. You use it in a really small, confined space where you can really record the sound of whoever's, whether it's vocals or whether it's guitar, or any type of instrument, flute, for example. It's really going to bring out the clarity of that instrument and not the space that it's in. The ones that are next to it are electret microphones. So these types of microphones are within laptops and smartphones. They're so tiny and they have exactly what they need to record and be able to pick up those impulses. So they look a lot different than the fancier microphones on the left. But those are also interesting because they're super micro. So what is audio? Audio is any sound that's recorded or reproduced. And audio typically, as we know it in Soundtrap, is going to look something like this. And it's very general waveform. So you can see that the smaller parts of this waveform are where there's no sound or very little sound. And then you have these larger stretches, these lines, that accentuate how loud the sound is coming through. So these waveforms here are just like the waves that we talk about when we hear vibrations. And so the vibrations are picked up, and it usually goes through a simple process like this. So you have a signal. So for example, my voice is a signal. Those vibrations are being picked up by a transducer and sampled at particular points. And then those samples are then rendered and converted into binary code and displayed as a digital waveform. So we have this process of vibrations being recorded and sampled and then converted to zeros and ones, which you know is binary code, and displayed as the waveform that we see on our screen in Soundtrap. So that's audio. What does audio look like in Soundtrap? So next to our track icon, it's anything that has the shape of a waveform next to it. And you can see it looks a lot like the actual loop itself. And we're going to be looking for these audio waveforms right now. In addition to the track itself, when you look inside the loop tab, you're going to see the same symbol as well. So this is an audio loop. This is something that's been recorded with a microphone. What we're going to try to explore now is actually adding some audio loops into a basic project. So this is what I'd like you to do right now. If you can open up a new project in Soundtrap, and you can do that by clicking Enter Studio, you're going to navigate to the loop tab, which is on the right-hand side. and you're going to search for loops that have this audio waveform symbol next to it. And we're going to drag and drop some loops in our project. We might not have the chance to refine this, and that's a good thing because this is actually part of our assignment. So I'm kind of getting you started on this. But let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to stop sharing this keynote. We're going to go back to Chrome. And we're going to start from scratch. So I'm going to go into my project screen here. And you can do this too. We're going to enter our studio. So we're going to click over here on the left. I'm going to select music. And then over here on the right is our loop tab. So I'm going to go ahead and select this. And we're going to select our audio loops. Now, because I should probably get into the habit of it, I'm going to go ahead and select my key. Just here at the bottom, I'm going to choose C major. You can choose whatever key that you like. I'm going to choose from my major scale here. Not as important. The important thing is we're going to be looking for audio loops for now, just to demonstrate, and then we can go back and make a real full-length song. So these ones here, these are audio, and you can see the waveform there. And I'm going to go ahead and, for now, just double-click, select one of these. So here's my audio waveform. And if I go in here and zoom way in, you can actually see the wave itself, which is kind of cool. You can actually kind of see how it's sampled, the little divisions there. And I like to show the kids that. They think it's pretty cool. So that's our recorded sound. Why don't you go ahead and for a minute, look through your loop tab here, and you're going to try to find loops that have this audio waveform next to it. And you're going to double click and add this to your project. If you have any questions in this time, feel free to put them in the Q&A. I'll go ahead and answer those. I have a couple people asking me, how did I show that wave? I can absolutely tell you. I use a Mac, and you can probably do this on your computer as well, even if it's not a Mac, but I use a 2-finger zoom. So whatever your zoom options are on your computer, you're going to do that. So I like to click somewhere here, and then I like to zoom in. And then I can also, if I hover over my timeline, I can zoom in even further in my loop. And that's how I was able to kind of show the waveform there, which is kind of cool. Okay, awesome. So hopefully you get the chance to explore that. We're going to take a look quickly now at the other type of file, which is called a MIDI file. So let me go ahead back to here. Okay. We're going to do our intro to MIDI very quickly. All right, so what is MIDI? MIDI is an acronym for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. And MIDI is the other type of file that's used, and it's very specifically a digital representation of a musical performance. So you have these note velocities that are showing up when you record using something like a controller. So in Soundtrap, you can actually use your typing keyboard as a controller. You can use an external keyboard. I actually have one here. This is called a launch pad. You could use a launch pad as a controller. I have another one here. Actually, I kind of like to collect them, so I have quite a few. This is also a controller. And usually, you plug them in USB and they can play back and record with MIDI. MIDI is also a combination of zeros and ones, binary code. And when these instruments record into a program like Soundtrap, they're converted to these note values of pitch, rhythm, and velocity. So what does MIDI look like in Soundtrap? If you are looking at your loop, on the left side, where you normally see your track icon, it's not going to show anything that's similar like audio waveforms are. It's not simplified in that way. Most of the time, you'll actually see the instrument. So you'll see a drum, you'll see a piano, you'll see a guitar, and then it's going to show you on the right where your track actually is these MIDI note events, these blocks. I like to call them MIDI blocks, but they're technically MIDI note events, and they represent pitch, rhythm, and velocity. So those are the files, the other types of files that we're going to look for in Soundtrap. Another thing as well, the way that they display these in Soundtrap is a little unique, but they have them labeled as eighth notes. So if you're in the loop tab, you want to look for anything that has those eighth notes next to it. Okay, we're going to take a second now and look at this as well. And I know, again, we're running short on time, but if we could take a minute and explore this, we're going to, instead of looking at audio loops now, look at MIDI loops. And I'm going to go ahead and show that to you as well. Now we have 4 minutes. Okay. So I'm going to delete this here. And I'm going to go back into my loop tab. And I'm going to look for MIDI loops. Now, what I can do is I can actually search MIDI. Yeah, whoops, I did not spell that right. I can search MIDI in the loop bar here. Or not the loop bar, sorry, in the search bar of the loop tab. And they will pop up. And you can see they're over here, the eighth notes. These are all different types of MIDI loops. I'm going to go ahead and double click. And there's a MIDI loop. What I can even show you further is what these notes look like in here. So here are all these note events, and they're showing pitch as well as rhythm through the timeline, and then a velocity is also in here as well. So there's our velocity. Velocity is dynamics, so how loudly that plays back. I'm just going to demonstrate quickly what this assignment is. So you're going to go ahead and create 2 different projects. One is going to be audio and one is going to be MIDI. And you're going to add 4 loops to your project. You're going to try to make it around 24 seconds. And you can adjust those loops as much as you want to. Let me show you quickly an example. So I'm going to go ahead and use just audio loops for right now. And I'm going to double click them into my project. And I'm going to hold on just at my tempo here because it's extremely fast. Okay. And just because I can do this, I'm going to redo all of that. Okay, let's go in here. And I'm trying to show you kind of like fast-paced. Trying to get some sounds in here. Right now, there's a lot of drums, and before I was able to kind of get a little bit more of an example. Let me just open the one that I had up before, and then we can finish out for today. But that's basically what you want to do. Here is the MIDI example. So that's audio. This is MIDI. And if I had more time, I could extend these out. I can even add more MIDI loops to this, but you want it to be around 24 seconds. And then over here, yeah, I would go through and I would try to add more audio loops to this. But for the sake of time, I'm going to head back to my screen here and just show you quickly what that assignment looks like. So you just have it for reference when you review this video. So exploring audio. So you're going to go ahead and enter the studio, add 4 audio loops, no MIDI, and you're going to try to make it at least 25-second long. So you're going to drag those loops out and try to use at least 4 different instruments. I thought I had those loops lined up paired with different instruments, but they were all percussion, but that's okay. When you go ahead and add them, just be mindful of that. And then for MIDI, you're going to do the same thing too. Whoops. Nope. It's going back now. You're going to do the same thing, except you're going to do it with MIDI. So you're going to add 4 MIDI files, and those ones have the 1/8 notes on them. Try to make it around 24-25 seconds long and add at least 4 different instruments. So we're going to look at that next time we see each other. Questions, should this all be the same file? Try to use 2 different assignments for this. So once you finish the first one, when you've entered your studio and made your project, you're going to go back, you're going to save it, go back to your studio homepage, and then you're going to create a new project with MIDI, for example. So 2 different projects, and you're going to save them. Okay, can you use audio loops and MIDI loops in the same composition? Try to isolate it so it's just audio for one project and then just MIDI for the other, for sure. Is it possible to shrink or extend a loop such that the tempo is adjusted? Ooh, that's a good, you know what, we'll return to that, Diane. That's a great question. Okay, great. This was awesome. Thank you so much. I hope this is a little bit more fluid for everybody. I hope we were able to answer the majority of your questions that you had, and we can return to this next time and and share the things that worked out great, things that we had an issue with, and so come with your questions, because those were really, really helpful for everybody.
Awesome. And Jillian, thank you so much again for your time. Thank you everyone for being here and for joining us. Just a reminder that tomorrow you'll be receiving a recap email that will have the video recording of this evening's class. I know a couple of people mentioned in the chat that maybe they had to bounce out for a moment or whatever the reason might be. So check that out. If for some reason tomorrow by the end of the day you do not receive the recap email, please send us a message to hledu@halleonard.com. That's going to come straight to me and my team, and we'll make sure that we get you those recap emails. So if you're not getting that, please send us a message. But thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you all again next week.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.